The number of abductions hasn't really changed since the 1970s.
It's just been reported more, haven't they?
They're reported more, and because of that, you think, oh, it's a much greater risk, because when in the 1970s you saw news of it like once every blue moon, now you see it every day, every week.
But then it's our responsibility as parents, isn't it? When often we've done things at parents that at the time you think is harmless, and then you see something like the Madeleine McCann incident or other things, and you think, oh my, what on earth did I do that for? And I have an overactive mind. I mean, as much as my head would want my little boy to go out and be free and live liberally, my heart just won't allow it. It's, you know, I worry, and maybe that anxiety will decrease.
Well, to take your point, aren't you more likely to get mugged now because you've got more stuff on you? In the 1970s, we didn't have MP3 players, we didn't have mobile phones. There was nothing really to pinch. I mean, if I got mugged, you get a bit of string and a sherbet dib-dab. You know, that was it. So now you've got more to take.
But I don't know if the absolute value of the thing. I mean, kids got mugged for string and sherbet dib-dabs in the 1970s. You know, kids will, you know, nasty kids will steal whatever they've got to be stolen, and the fact that it's got a higher value doesn't make much, you know, difference to it, really.
I still think there's a way children can be children and be protected. There's a fine line. I think the protective parent, as I feel, it's my responsibility to make sure my children are safe, and he can still do. I mean, Holly, you must feel the same.
I think that you just go, what if?
Exactly.
And I think what if is just
You'd
so
never
great.
live with yourself, would you?
And I think that's what it is.
And I would never want to be in the minority because of something I'd overlooked or I didn't take into consideration. And if I'm an overprotective parent...
I can't believe some of the things
so
I was allowed. I mean, I had a moped when I was 16. I was scooting into Brighton. I mean, things like the thought of Harry having a trampoline in the garden. I'm terrified of that because I just think he's going to fall off it and hurt himself. And I know that's exactly what you're saying, but the moment you're in that situation, you suddenly go,
But do you think it's a mother thing as well, though? Because my husband is a bit... I mean, you must be the same. I mean, Sean's like, let him live. Just let him kind of experiment. I'm like, no!
Well, we have got a trampoline in the garden, and our greatest delight was to see how far I could fire them up in the air. So, you know, there is a difference, I think, between, you know, fathers and
you need someone to say, oh, look after them, look after them. You need someone to say, look, just let them
and
go
isn't
a bit.
that why it works, though? Because fathers have their role and we have our role, and quite often it's to be overprotective and worried.
So we've looked at, you know, various aspects of whether it's the mugging or the abduction or the violent death, and childhood cancer is one of the second highest killer of children between 5 and 14. You know, so those sort of things. But what effect is this having, our overprotection, on children, on their physical and mental development?
And self-esteem, all these sorts of things. Imagine all of us here, in fact, any adult watching this programme now will know the sort of freedom they had as a child, and they'll know that most children today don't get it. And you know that when you were young, you went out and did more exercise. Kids were slimmer, healthier and fitter. I mean, there's so many statistics to show that kids are overweight, dangerously overweight now. There's more mental health problems amongst young children. Partly it's because more are diagnosed, but partly because, you know, you have no power, you have no autonomy.
But is that kind of taking it to the extreme? Because your child can still get physically fit and be watched over by a parent, and they can still get the mental agility and be challenged in that way, and it just be kind of protected a little bit more.
Let's. We said be quick off the mark with your emails, and you have been. Nikki says, hard though it is, we need to allow children freedom and independence, or how will they ever learn to assess the risk and look after themselves? I'm speaking as mum of 5 and 7-year-olds.
Kathy in Kent says, I have 2 boys. I worry constantly about them and they don't go out that much. I wish I did not worry and let them make decisions for themselves.
Holly in Lincoln says, I think we're more protective over our children these days, but rightly so after all the stories in the news. Once again, as we were talking about, it's heavily reported. Just going to the shops is a worrying task for our children because of all the media hype.
Yeah, Robin from Lincolnshire says, I don't think the world is a more dangerous place than it has been before. It's just the media report more and they than they used to. So we're overexposed and consequently more paranoid as society.
I'd agree with that. I mean, but the real brave thing is to realise your fears and not to pretend they're not there, but then to think, I know I'm scared, but nevertheless, I will let them go.
But it depends on the child as well, though, doesn't it? Because if you have kind of a mature child, then yes, you're going to be OK about your 12-year-old getting public transport into the city. But, you know, some of them don't mature that quickly. I just think children want to grow up fast enough. We shouldn't really encourage that.
I hope I can be brave enough when Harry gets older.
Yeah, I hope I get better.
Yeah. 2 teenage girls are much more frightening.
Well, I think bringing a teenage girls into the world is very brave, having been one myself. The deception I put my father under.
No comment.